Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Online College Students 2019. My name is Christy Farrell, the Event Marketing Manager at Learning House, and I'm happy to be joined today by our presenters, David Kleinfelter and Carol Islanian, and our moderator, Andrew Magda. Before getting started, let us review a few housekeeping items. We welcome your questions and comments. Please type your questions and comments in the chat pane, and be sure to send your message to all panelists. A moderator will respond to the questions throughout the presentation. We will also take a few minutes following the presentation for our presenters to answer any unanswered questions. A copy of the slides, as well as a recording of today's presentation, will be sent to all attendees. With that, I turn the presentation over to our moderator, Andrew Magda.
Hello and welcome to the webinar. As Christy was saying, I will be monitoring the chat panel, so please type in any questions you have into that panel and I will try to reply to them, and if they are relevant for particular slides, I'll also try to raise them with our two panelists, Dr. David Kleinfelter and Carol Islanian. Dr. Dave Kleinfelter is the former Chief Academic Officer at Learning House, a Wiley brand. Dave has a number of years of higher education and secondary education experience. He came to the Learning House around 8 years ago and helped co-author the Online College Student Survey, which this is the 7th edition of that report. He is joined by Carol Islanian, president of Islanian Market Research. Carol also has a vast background with higher education consulting and marketing. Carol brings numerous years of knowledge to the table, working closely with colleges and universities, private, public, and for-profit all across the country for a number of years in their developing of their online programs and also their adult education offerings. Dave, would you like to begin the presentation?
I'm happy to. Thank you very much, Andrew. Carol and I are delighted that you folks have elected to spend some of your precious time with us today. We enjoy gathering this data and sharing it with people from higher education institutions around the country in the hopes that it will help you understand this interesting group of online learners better and provide good services to them. We're going to begin. I need some technical help here, folks, a little bit to advance the slides. So pardon us for just a second while we get the slides moving forward. While we're getting ready to change the slides, let me explain to you folks that every year that we've done this survey, we have retained some questions so that we can see trends over time if things are moving or changing. And in other years, as in this year, we've added new questions. And this year we added a number of questions on new topics that we think will be of interest that were a bit of a surprise to us as we review the results. So we'll highlight those as we go through. So I'm sorry that we're having technical difficulties to get okay, here we go. Okay. Thank you very much. So here's Dave and Carol. So you folks help me with the advancing the slides. So just a quick overview of the history of online learning and education in higher ed as we get started here. Many of you will recall that back in 1998, on the left side of this screen, the U.S. Department of Education had a rule that prohibited colleges and universities from offering online programs that enrolled more than 50% of their students or included more than 50% of a program. And in 1998, the Department of Education authorized what they called a demonstration project to permit a select group of institutions to, in a sense, violate that rule or not be constrained by that rule. They could enroll as many students as they cared to and didn't have to worry about 50% of the program and so forth. So you can see what happened in this slide from 1998 when the demonstration project started. There were only 78,000 online students. And then 8 years later, with just about 24 institutions that had the freedom to break that 50% rule, the online enrollment had jumped dramatically to over 1 million students. And in 2006, then, the department declared victory, I guess you could say, and dropped the rule and opened the gates then for any institution to enroll as high a percentage of students as they wanted in their online programs and not to be able to offer 100% of the program online. So we're going to show you then as you go right across the chart here what happened in 4-year jump. So from 2006 when the rule was deleted to 4 years later in 2010, there was dramatic growth in the online programs. About 45%, as it shows here, were in the public institutions, but 43% were the online for-profit institutions, and they were growing at rapid rates. University of Phoenix, Kaplan, DeVry, those kind of institutions, as well as the large adult-serving public institutions like Thomas Edison and University of Maryland, University College. At the top there, you'll see just a small group, 12%, were the independent nonprofit colleges and universities that started to get into this market, so to speak, when they had the opportunity. 4 years later, as you move to the right, in 2014, the for-profit enrollments had already peaked and they were starting to decline because of competition. The nonprofit publics had gone up to 50% of the enrollments, and you see the bigger growth. 22% of the students now in the orange bar at the top were enrolled in the independent nonprofit institutions. Up until that point, we didn't know how many institutions were actually offering these programs, but IPEDS then started collecting data, the government did through IPEDS, and you can see below the number of institutions that were offering fully online degree programs. Then as you move to the right, go ahead, Carol.
Oh, I was just going to make a point, Dave, on your 2010 chart with the 1.32 thousand students in the for-profit. I can remember 2010 and the University of Phoenix announcing its largest enrollment right at that point, and it was 485,000 students of that 1 million plus.
Yeah,
and
that's
then you
a
can
huge
see
percentage.
that was a huge portion, and then you can see the decreases as we went on with more of the entry of the other institutions.
As we move to the right then, the most recent data is from 2017 where IPEDS was available to collect this. And again, you see here that the big move is up here in the independent nonprofit institutions. The for-profits continue to decline to 21% of the student body, where the independent private institutions are growing. So it kind of sets the stage for where we are today. The one theme that I would highlight at the beginning, and we'll get into the data here in just a second, is that the online college student population has not only come of age, but they kind of want regular services. They want to be full-fledged members of the university community. In those early days, we often thought of these students as kind of extra or apart from the university. The online programs were maybe run from a different location, different staff, different people, and they didn't mix so much with the campus population. But I think you'll see as we go through the data that that's beginning to change, and these students kind of don't want to be thought of as just here for the degree and then gone. So let's move forward with the next slide.
Couldn't agree more with that statement. You're absolutely right. So let me move on with how we collected these data and the methodology we used, which is typical of the methodology Aslanian Market Research uses in all its market analyses nationwide. And if we can move on, it was we spoke to, as we have for the last 8 years, we gathered data from 1,500 respondents nationwide. Many of you are interested in how we collect and identify the 1,500 respondents. And we work with an excellent agency, and I've been with them for over 20 years, and they're able to depend on a national panel, and which has been created only for market research purposes. And they can select the 1,500 respondents that fit our criteria for entering this survey. And the sample of hundreds of thousands of individuals from that panel are based on demographics collected by the US Census Bureau. And it includes more than 250 behavioral and demographic data points. So that enables us to target specific characteristics, which were in this study and in our earlier studies. Next slide. These qualifications. We only spoke to people nationwide who could say yes to the following questions. I was, is, or will be very shortly in a fully online college degree, certificate, or license program. I completed it within the last 3 years, or I'm currently enrolled, or I have very firm plans to enroll in the next year. And by that, we mean they can name an institution, they can name a topic. They also had to be 18 years of age or older and hold a high school diploma or GED. The reason we have these qualifications is because we have always measured demand and not need. We don't ask people what they would like to do someday if they with all the resources they might be able to pull together. No, we rather, and it's much more fruitful to rely on people who just bought the product. So we call that demand. So we only get opinions and descriptions from those who have actually engaged in online college study. Moving on. So now we'll begin with some key findings from the 2019 survey. And first, I want to take, David, would you take the complex question?
Sure. A little bit of background about this population. When you go to serve online students, they're different in some key respects from your on-campus students. First of all, it's a complex population. You have 10% of them are Generation Z members. These are the young people below the age of 22 who have never known a time when there wasn't an Apple iPhone. So you kind of know how they think and how they use technology. Millennials is the biggest group. About half of the online students are in this 23 to 38 demographic. Gen X, again, a little bit different than the millennials in terms of their attitudes and values and beliefs, 30% there. And then many of us, I think, are probably Gen X or boomers. I'm a baby boomer, and 10% of the online students are people my age. So if you think about the difference between a Gen Z person who's always known an iPhone and kind of lives on their iPhone and able to communicate and do all kinds of activities there, versus boomers like me who may not feel as comfortable or have different attitudes about how we learn, all of these students are in the online classroom at the same time. And so it creates an interesting challenge and opportunity for those of us who run online programs. So here's just some breakdowns. About a third of these online students are first generation. And that means that 70% are not, but these people are just new to the college experience and the first of their families to go. And 87% have prior college experience. They've attended on campus or done some kind of program prior to this. That means that 13% have never set foot on a campus. They have no prior college experience. They're going right to their online programs. And then 1 in 3 of these people have been out of school for 5 or more years. So some are just continuing right on, where others have taken a substantial break and they're coming back, and maybe they're kind of anxious about the whole idea about going back to college. So just a quick points there to emphasize how complex this group is. Carol's
Yes,
going to
and
walk you through the demographics now.
okay, but before I do that, let me say that that large percentage who have some college are the 60%, I believe, of American college students who don't finish a degree in 4 or 6 years, one of the two. So they begin and they don't finish because they don't know why they're there, they don't know the major they want, and they go to work and then they come back and act like one of our online students for the flexibility and convenience. Let me go into the demographics of this pool of respondents. The median income was $55,000, and that's the median family income, by the way, so that's just about par with the national average. 64% are white, and that statistic has not changed dramatically. We expect it will with a burgeoning of the Hispanic population, but we're still 2/3 white population in these online students. 60% are female, which is a little bit below the 65 mark, which we've often seen with returning older students. 60% have no children, and I'll tell you why very soon. 59% are fully employed, full-time, so they're busy people. 55%, over half are single, so we would not expect them to have children. And the average age is 31.8. And I do want to tell you that they're younger and younger each year. 1/3 of these online students are under 25. 40% are under 25 at the undergraduate level and 23% at the graduate level. These online students are continuously getting younger and younger. And I think we can all can come up with the answers of why that's true. We're getting more mixed populations. We're getting people who can't afford to do it the first time fully. They come back at a later age, but then again, they wait a while and their average age gets up to about 32 when they are ready to come back to the online program. But the main point here is they're younger and younger each year. So you must think of that when you prepare your messaging and your marketing profiles. The need for convenience obviously is growing, because we know that 60% of these people are employed full-time, 40% are parents, and 70% are enrolled full-time. Now that's a juxtaposition on the first two figures. The reason they're enrolled full-time and yet we can say are very, very busy people is because you colleges out there enable them to study full-time, work full-time, and take on their parental roles. And that is by offering what they want most are 6 or 8 week courses back to back over the course of a year. That will enable many of them to enroll part-time, get the aid benefits, and finish faster, which they all want to do. The need for convenience is growing and growing and growing. Look at the 36% rate, which is a description of about the tuition in terms of how they made their decision of which institution to go to. And more than 1/3, 36% said, the tuition for my preferred program is higher than others, but its convenience and format and schedule and location are ideal for me. So the many, many private colleges I work with are saying to me, but our prices are higher. We can't really draw them from the publics and the others who are charging far less. And my answer to you is, look at what they want more. They need convenience. They need a format that's amenable to their life schedules and their location and so forth. So there are things you can do to address this. And the next highest was 33%, 1/3. Tuition for my preferred program is the lowest among the programs. So you have people who will choose, a third will choose really on the basis of price, and a third or more that will choose on the basis of convenience. Or as you see, purple, content, or as you will see, has a good reputation. So these are the things you need to promote to draw these people to your institution. Next. Let's talk about cost. In all our surveys, it's the #1 concern of all our returning students to online education. It's the #1 factor for undergrads and tied with reputation for grad students. And that makes sense. When you go to grad school, you want an excellent institution because that's your last step before that key job that you're looking for. And the reputation seems to be much more important at the graduate level. But 20% said that figuring out how to pay tuition was the hardest part of enrolling in a program. And some of the surveys we have run with people who inquire, apply, but don't enroll will say, I can't wait till after the admission decision to find out how much aid I'm getting from that college. I need to know up front. So financial aid information is very important as you're recruiting these students, and it can't wait till the end of the funnel. It has to be addressed early on because otherwise they'll just run on to another institution. And I'd say only a third selected the least expensive institution. Isn't that interesting? The reason is time, convenience, tuition made a big difference in what institution they would choose. Let's move on to the programs that they participated in and selected. And no surprise to everyone, they're degree oriented. I keep waiting for the certificate percentage to move up, but it's always, been around 14. I think what I usually see is about 17, 18%. It hasn't moved lately, and licensure remains as it is. So it's degree. The programs of study, we've given you two comparisons here, one in 2019 and 5 years earlier in 2014. And let's look at the undergraduate column. It's business, slightly dropping in the last year to end 2019. Health and medicine, it's slightly dropping from 17 to 14. Computers and IT, I'm surprised it's not a larger growth from 14 to 15. I expect that will hop even higher in the next few years. And the social sciences, the criminal justice remain primarily the same. If you look at the yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, I was just going to say, if you go to the grad side, you see that computers and IT took a big jump this year,
Yes.
significant a jump. So it's probably coming at the undergrad level too.
I expect it will. I think in this next survey, we'll probably see it. But yes, if you look at the graduate, a huge jump in computers and IT, and a little bit of a jump in business, although we see relatively flat statistics overall in business. And computers and IT, as you can see, is that major growth area, and we can expect it to get bigger and bigger. And as we go down the chain here, arts and humanities, look at that undergraduate from 9 to 15%. Dave, can you help me explain that? That's a pretty good jump, almost twice. So arts and humanities are growing in interest for online education among undergraduates. Why do you think, Dave?
I don't have strong, data to support it, but I think it could be that people are just interested in general degrees. Psychology is still a popular degree, but it could also be that some of these people are in like computer graphics or design that through the arts and humanities. I mean, they're a technically based field, but
exactly. Go ahead.
Well, the other, as you go down the undergrad side there, you see that STEM fields did take a big jump.
Yes.
So computer science, but not so much for undergrads, but STEM took a pretty significant jump this year.
Right, and if you combine that with our computers and IT, that's a nice large percentage, I'd say. Education and teaching, relatively flat, if not going down, and certainly at the graduate level on the right. And you all witnessed that. I think it has a lot to do with the legislation at your state level governments where there's not a lot of reward for getting extra credits at the education level. Number of schools considered, we always ask this question in our surveys. The average among all students is about 2.5 schools. But look at that top row, all students, 23% only approached one institution. And we add another 31, over half approach one one or two institutions. And what this should say to you as you manage your enrollment funnel is don't wait, get to these people immediately, because when they come to you, you have a 100% or 50% chance of recruiting them. So don't hesitate. Otherwise, that 31% would go to their next school. Waiting for the chart to come back. Okay. If you look at the undergraduate, 28%, and that's because most undergraduates are considering places closer than not, so maybe there are fewer choices. So 31% take one, and when you add the 31%, you're getting up to 60% who take one or two. These are people who need your recruitment and your recruitment strategies and your recruiters right on their back because they're ready to make a decision. And you don't have a lot of competition. Likewise at the graduate level.
Carol, I would add one comment here about this particular slide. It shows that about a quarter only inquire from one institution. That number is shrinking. Each year it gets a little bit lower, and that's a result, obviously, of the competition. In 5, maybe 10 years ago, there was only one institution in the region that offered online degrees, so they had
Right.
first choice. As more and more, especially the private independent institutions offer online degree programs, students have choices.
Absolutely.
And so they're looking for more than, or looking at more than one institution. So the competition is increasing, but still a nice opportunity here.
Absolutely, right. But I also say this particular chart tells a lot about how quickly your recruiters need to act to solidify that enrollment. And
Absolutely.
Dave, over to you for distance.
Yeah, so let's take a pause here for just a second and make sure that we remind you folks that we're happy to answer your questions. If you have a comment or a question you'd like to share with the group, if you type it into the chat portion of your screen, we'll call those out and respond to them. Andrew, do we have any questions at this point to share with the group?
No, none at this point, Dave. So if anyone has any, they can type it in the chat feature and we'll try to answer them.
Sure. So as I said at the beginning, there's some questions that we ask every year. This distance to campus is one of those. And we find this strong trend over time, especially kind of accelerating here in the last few years, for students to stay close to home. Again, we think that's obviously a factor that there's more institutions offering online degrees now. And so a student can pick a local institution that has a strong brand that they know, are familiar with, and that maybe they've had some association with. So they stay closer to home. And it's an opportunity again to kind of strengthen the ties with those students because more and more they can come to campus for events. They may not want to come for classes because they've elected an online program, but there's other ways that the university can relate to those local students who are online students. So
You know, Dave, one thing I think now that I'm looking at this again, one thing I think that's influencing that 67% is the entrance of younger and younger students. My hypothesis would be the younger students may tend to stay closer to home for their education than older students for some reason or other, maybe more women than men, I don't know. But this is a very, very important finding because it certainly influences where you should do your marketing. And it's very easy for you to find your competition. They're in your own backyard. This data are phenomenal in terms of localizing online education, where at one time, 10 years ago, there were all these large centralized institutions, but now they're right around the corner.
Yeah, it's a good point. There doesn't show on this slide, but there is a difference between grad and undergrad. Grad students are willing to go further from home, but still the trend is there that it's getting closer and closer as more opportunities are available.
Right, and you can really identify your competitive edge more easily when you look at your nearby competition. They're easier to examine, they're much more visible, and you can find ways to, outmatch them.
So a question that we've asked the last few years, And we see a consistent trend coming here that the students are interested in using mobile devices more and more in their coursework. So the breakdown here is kind of interesting. If you look at the bottom bar here, where the red dot is going across, the older students aren't quite as interested and as anxious to do online programs. Fully half of them are saying don't want to, don't need it.
Right.
So again, you see the difference in the generations, but they're all taking the same classes here. Interesting that I think people should pay attention to this the purple bars, where they say, no, I didn't do my classes or my coursework online, but I would have liked to. So apparently some of the institutions are not offering mobile-friendly LMSs and mobile-friendly platforms where students can use their mobile devices. And if you're in that category, you got to think seriously about developing that technology, because students want it, and increasingly they're going to want to use their mobile devices to actually do classwork and do coursework and not just do inquiries. So something to think about if you're in that purple category.
Absolutely.
Carol, I'll turn it over to
Yes,
you
here
for the
I
second.
am. So the key question for our marketing people is, what was most influential in these respondents' selection of a school to attend? And you can see we have 3 heavy winners here. Online reviews, that is what others are saying about you and what you might be able to promote about yourself. The others would be college search ranking websites like eLearners, Classes USA, US News and World Report. So these ranking websites are very important. They look at them to see who in the neighborhood, by the way, ranks highest. And recommendations of friends and family. See, that was another reason, Dave. I think the proximity of the schools they select, you want your friends and family to know the school you're going to. And so the nearer they are to where you reside, the more likely they are, and they rely on their recommendations. This may be influential in the in the selection of nearby institutions. So that's a pretty heavy in the 1/3 range or more for those top 3 methods of getting yourself in front of their, in their thinking. But college events, not for these people. They don't have the time to run to them. Neither they may have gone to a community college, but that was not direct mail. Forget it. And emails doesn't seem to be very influential at all. And going to the next slide, we go down the list. Now you see TV commercials about schools a lot. It's the big players, the Grand Canyons, the Southern New Hampshires, but to the extent to which these people are influenced by them, it doesn't seem like they have a great deal of influence. It's only for probably notoriety and recognition. Dave.
Yeah, so another kind of observation about that is those top 3 that stand out are items that are really not under the control of the university. You can control your TV advertising or radio advertising or direct mail, but you can't control what people say about you in these third-party sources. So it's something to think about how you build your reputation so other people will talk favorably about your institution. You can't just go out though and buy enough leads to contact these people directly. It's a tough one. So this year, as I mentioned, we asked some new questions on new topics, and this is one of those. Online students acquire soft skills. So you've all seen the popular press as well as the higher ed journals and the higher ed press that report that employers are looking for students that are better prepared to go to work. They want to hire people and put them to work. And unfortunately, a lot of these company CEOs and human resource directors fill out surveys and they say these students aren't prepared. They don't have the right skill sets that we want. When we hire them, we have to retrain them and so forth. So we asked the question, did your online program teach you these key soft skills? And here's a list of them: critical thinking, writing, time management, etc. These are often the skills that show up in these surveys. that employers are looking for. So first we asked the students, did they teach you this program in your program, or was it part of your program? And you can see the results here. A pretty high percentage, 63% on critical thinking, all the way down to about a third on teamwork, oral communication skills, and so forth. But then we asked a follow-up question on the next slide. Did you improve in these areas? And lo and behold, the students had marked improvement in those same soft skills. So even though the institution wasn't directly teaching them, or it wasn't obvious to the students that they were being taught, they report that they improved significantly. Usually on a slide like this, we get this kind of 30-30-30 split, you know, a third, a third, a third. But once in a while we get results like this where a vast majority of the students are in agreement. So critical thinking, 85% improved their critical thinking, 84% improved time management, and so forth. So the good news is that they're developing these skills, they're learning these skills in their online programs, even though that they don't realize that they're being directly taught them. So I think there's an opportunity here for institutions to highlight just what they put in their curriculum to help students improve in these areas. And it would be nice for students to be able to put badges or call out courses in their transcript where they learn these skills to document for prospective employers. Well, I learned these, I'm improving, or I've got good skills in these areas that you're looking for. So we can help our students.
Yeah, you know, Dave, looking at these data and understanding that the vast majority of these people are working. So there could be a little correlation here about their feedback to the faculty about what is important as they're working. It's not something they're preparing for, but they're right in the midst of their work life experience. So maybe that's an influence on what is being taught.
It's also true that I think another way to say that, or piggyback on that, is that these people are working, they're professionals in the field in many cases, but their college education improved their skills in these basic kind of soft skills areas. So it's a validation of why people go to college too, and what they learn. Exactly. It improves their ability.
They're getting what makes a difference on the job.
Yeah. Carol, career services for you.
Okay, this is something I've noticed in the past couple of years in our regional market studies, and that is we always thought these older, but now I can see they're younger and younger, but the online student, more mature student, really was working. Though notice how many people were working full time. Why would they want career services? But in all our surveys, we see more and more demand for services from their institution during their online study. And the number one factor is they still are interested in a career advisor. Now, I don't know how many of you out there supply any of those rows of services, but obviously this is a great ticket to get them to look at your place and not someplace else. And in order of importance, I would say you'd say working with a career advisor. That should be an opportunity for them. A job search, sure, they're back there while they're working, they're probably looking to advance or get a better salary. Maybe they want a little bit of self-assessment. What am I really good at? I've been doing this job for 4 years. I didn't finish my degree the first time around, and now maybe I'm still in the wrong slot. So can you tell me what I should be doing better? And many of us are looking for help on how to find a job, and so on and so forth. So career services should not be laid aside because we think they're all working and they know what they want. These are people who are very, assertive. They know what they want, and they're looking for something bigger and better probably most of the time. And we go down the list here.
Carol, one thing I would highlight here, just to think about, is the far right column in red, where the students report that it wasn't offered at their institution. Again, those aren't big numbers, 7-8%, but if you're not offering these kind of services or making them available to your online students, it's something to really think about, because they obviously, many of them, 2/3 typically want them and would use them. Also point out that first generation students use these career services significantly more than other students, and minority students quite a bit
Right.
more. So if you have a demographic of those kind of people in your programs, you want to really think about targeting them and helping them get access to those
Right.
services.
And another thing I think to bear in mind, as I understand institutions, it's not that these services aren't offered. They're probably offered to the other populations, but not necessarily to the online students,
Sure.
because we don't think they need them. But there aren't many colleges that don't offer, at least some or most of these services to their regular, quote unquote, regular students. So now we're seeing that the demand is as great for those who come in online. And also this is another way to attract them to your place from somewhere else, rather than go to another institution, because you're offering these helpful interventions.
Yeah, this next slide follows up on that, where we looked at other kinds of services besides career services. When we were designing the questionnaire this year, I saw an article about a university in the Midwest that offered a variety of services like the ones that are listed here: study skills, mental health assistance, money management assistance, and so forth, to their campus students, but they did it through an online program. And so I'm wondering, would the online students want some of these same services? So we asked the question this year, and the results were pretty startling, that in the purple column on down the left-hand side, these are students that already use those services from their institution. These are online students now. But look at the big blue bar down the center. Many of these students would use those services if they were
Yes.
offered. So point of, these are like other students, they need help in a variety of ways, and they would look to the university, and you could distinguish yourself by offering them. And again, typically we find this split on the far right. A lot of people aren't interested. So these students aren't the same. As we said, they're a very complex group. Part of them want the services, a third of them would use more, but there's also 25–30% that don't care and won't use them. So you don't have to, you can't please all the people all the time. Is kind of
Yeah.
the takeaway here.
I also think this chart says these students, the students in an institution, regardless of how they study, are more alike than different.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed, I think that, look at child care services and parenting skills. That's pretty high. Used or would have used 25 and 16, 41% would have used child care services. I thought they had disappeared on most college campuses, but we put the item in because it's a standard service.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought those two were interesting: parenting skills and child care services. It's a younger population, don't forget. It's not the 37-year-old individual coming back to school. Hurdles, Dave?
Yeah, so we asked a question about what was the hardest part about enrolling in your program. And number one here is the completing the financial aid forms. So or
Yes.
determining, the number two one here and below is determining how to pay for school. Carol mentioned that earlier. Gathering transcripts, third choice, or getting transfer credits put through. So again, we go back to the slides that Carol talked about at the beginning about convenience and how busy these people are, working full-time, going to school full-time. Anything an institution can do to make it easy for them, like go get the transcripts for them. Don't make them
Right.
go get it.
Right.
Make it easy to transfer their credits so that it's a one-stop shop, and give them the information about the credits before they enroll, or the
Right.
assistance in how to pay for it. So everything you can do to eliminate these hurdles would be appropriate.
Right. Also, they do need much more help in getting through the application process. When we surveyed students who, inquired but didn't apply, applied but didn't enroll, they just could not get through all the forms on their own. And there were all these hurdles. Some of them, recommendations aren't here because not many of you require recommendations, but the gathering of transcripts, I've worked with a number of institutions that now have hired a third party with the consent of the applicant. This third party can go and get the transcripts to be sent right to the admitting institution, because this 12 and 16% to me look very low compared to the complaints we often hear.
So this slide continues, and you can
Yeah.
see that the numbers drop pretty low. So let's move to another new topic that we asked this year about learning outcomes. We had 6 questions about kind of the classroom experience or items related to it. And again, this is one of those where we got pretty unanimous, 81% is as high as it tends to get, that they felt like the course was interesting and compelling. They're confident that they learned skills that will help them be successful in the workplace. I want you to remember this point because we'll come back to about success in the workplace, and that the instructor presented the material effectively. These are good numbers, and kind of positive that we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit and say we're doing a pretty good job in the classroom with these online students.
I
The
know.
next,
This is remarkable. I'm really excited about these 80%. That's a very high proportion.
the next slide shows the following 3 questions. The numbers start to drop, but they're still pretty high
Yeah.
about that what they learn will be helpful in the workplace. This question, the middle one there, at least one professor or faculty or staff member had a conversation with me about my career, relates to that previous question about success in the workplace. These 2 questions were asked in a Gallup poll of all college students, the on-campus students and so forth. And there's a strong correlation between students that say one person had a conversation with me about careers and them feeling prepared and that they'll be successful in the workplace. And that's related to ultimate success and good feelings towards their alma mater. So how do you get at least one person to have a conversation with people, with your online students, about their career? Maybe not adjunct faculty, which many online programs use, but obviously career staff is a way to do
Right.
that. I don't think the one conversation is the key thing itself, but it shows that those institutions have a culture about careers and career assistance that I
Right.
think comes through.
Another thing you could say about the high level of agreement is that these people were ready for their education. They know what they wanted. They chose the institution and the topic, and they paid their dues and their money, and they got out of it what they want because they put probably more effort into it. And this was an important decision in their life. They've got other things they could worry about or do. But that high degree of agreement, I think, is part of the type of individual who does come back and enter the online market.
Yeah, so not to rain on the parade too much, but this last number, the 66% on the discussion forum, again, is a positive number,
Yeah.
but a third of these students are not happy with the discussion forums, which is a key part of most online programs. So it's an opportunity, again, to look to
Well,
how
you
do
mean
we
the
make
11%?
those,
You mean the 11?
well, 11 and 23 together
Okay, well,
are
okay.
not so positive. So, but 66% agree, but 11, 23, the numbers start to say a third of them think we could do better in terms of discussion forums. So it's something to think
One
about how
way.
you design
Yeah.
your courses and the kind of interaction and activities that students are assigned to do in
You're
those
right.
discussion forums. There are
Yeah.
ways to make discussion forums more compelling and interesting, I think. So
Right.
something to think about.
Right. And check out with your courses.
Yeah, so as Carol said, the perceived value of online learning kind of follows from the discussion about classrooms. These people feel pretty good, obviously, about their program. It was worth the cost. Now, again, remember that these are students that have completed the program, an online program. So they're the champions. They're the ones that did it. They
Right.
didn't drop out. They finished. But compared to what you're reading in the paper these days, these people feel pretty darn good
I think
about their
it's
college
incredibly
experience.
positive, really positive.
Mhm.
So this is an alternative that they appreciate at their point in life, and with all the things they have to be responsible for, they can still devote the time that's necessary, and it was worth it. I think that's very, very good data. And this is data you should also share with faculty members, by the way, because I looked at some of the institutions that are with us today, and I know many of you still have faculty cooperation as a hurdle. And I think a portion of the data that we're showing you today should be shared with those in the administration and the faculty who are still questioning the value of online education.
Great point. So this next slide is one of my favorite again, a new question that we added in this year's survey is what about alumni? So we focused this on the people that are enrolled or the ones that have already graduated. And I was taken aback by the strong response here. As I kind of said at the beginning, these students want to be part of the institution ongoing. It's their alma mater. They feel good about it.
Right.
Many of them plan to take classes in the future. A third say that they'll refer students to the school, their alma mater, because they had a good experience, obviously. And you read all the way down to 14% have donated or will donate to their institution. That's not a bad number for a typical
Not
annual
at
fund at
all.
many
Not at all.
institutions, especially the publics. So these are real students that want to keep coming. So it's a good opportunity, huge opportunity here to
Right.
connect with your alumni and to stay connected and to get referrals from them, to maybe have them come back and take future classes
Right.
themselves.
The prior table was good for the faculty, and this table is great for the administration.
Yeah, helps to make the point. So there's a couple of trends that we saw in the data that we didn't necessarily call out as a finding, but we would call your attention to pay attention to. We think this is coming. As we mentioned on the slide about program choice, there's increasing undergrad enrollments in the STEM and the humanities. And we'll see if that continues to get to the point of significance, but it's an interesting trend. This year we saw a big jump in males, and we're concerned. We don't know if that's going to be a trend or not, but we'll obviously want to track it. We saw the big increase in male-dominated programs like IT and STEM programs, so that could be a correlation there. And we think, go ahead, Carol.
Oh, I was just going to say with the Hispanics, I think I read recently that by 2042, Latinos or Hispanics will be majority minority.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's only 20 years away.
Well, the data from the Pew organization shows that there's rapid increases in Hispanic populations in high school and in traditional college programs. They haven't shown up yet in the online programs.
Right.
So about 10% of the students in our survey are Hispanic. They indicate they're Hispanic, and that's been pretty steady since we started this 7 years ago. But obviously the Hispanic population is booming in the high school level and in traditional program. So if you're in a position where you can provide services and be Hispanic student friendly, I think it would be a smart move to make, because I'm pretty sure they're coming, but we'll track this trend.
Particularly with the flattening of our growth rate among the national population. I think the demographics show that it was our lowest birth rate last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been, that we can see that as a result of our high school graduation numbers over the last 20 years, how the demographics have influenced numbers produced. So this is something to look forward to.
So Andrew, do we have any questions? People, take some time now. We have a few minutes left. If you have a particular question or topic you'd like to pursue, type in your question in the chat box and we'll respond to it. Andrew, do you have any?
One come in, Dave. I think it's more for Carol. It goes back to those marketing avenues that you were talking about, specifically around the online reviews and how important they are. Carol, can you talk a little bit more about what goes into that category? Some examples that universities should be looking at. Obviously, as these reviews become more and more popular, where should they be looking? What should they be monitoring? Can they actually influence any of these? Can you just talk a little more about this?
I think that's beyond my level of ability right now. I don't know what makes up the reviews, wherever they come from. But Dave, do you understand what their elements are in coming up with these figures? We can certainly look into that, but I'm not sure. What are the top 10 online programs? I've seen that. I see the listing, but I don't know what makes up their categories.
Yeah, it's
and
an
neither
interesting
does
point.
the consumer.
Yeah, these are, places like I've been interviewed probably half a dozen times by reporters from U.S. News and World Report, and they're writing about a topic that they think would be of interest. though, and those they publish those reports on their website. Then I think that feeds into this notion of these prospective students pay attention to sites like U.S. News and World Report and the information they find there. So how do you get your name or your institution written about there, or how do you influence that? It's very tough to do. I mean, I think again, it's an indirect relationship. You can't go out and make an ad up that says how great you are or highlight some of the key features of your university and then advertise it in your local media. That's not working as much as these the other way. So you indirectly, you want to have a great program. You want to have people. I mean, the one that you can influence of those top three are recommendations from former students. So you want to make sure that your students are well served and that they say good things about you and they tell their friends and neighbors about your institution. So encouraging that and highlighting that is indirect, but it's things that you can do. So the most important thing is to run a really good program and take good care of your students, and that word will get out. And when places like U.S. News and World Report write an article about, hey, these are institutions that are offering support services for students. You know, they even offer a form of health and wellness counseling. Well, if your institution does that and the students are doing the search, they notice that. I think that's where the connection comes. But it's indirect, and you can't directly influence it. You can't make it happen.
Yeah, another thing you could do though, if I was an institution, I would do periodic surveys of my online students to find out many of the elements in our past 6 surveys are probably all the questions you'd ever want to ask are there, and it's all in our reports. But you could ask your own students about the value, what they got out of it, where they heard about it. That's not only good for your future marketing, but you could publicize that in your marketing messages locally primarily, but also nationwide.
Sure, that's a good point. Find out what your students are thinking and
Absolutely. Quote
follow
them.
that. Yeah.
Well, I think Dave and I are ready for any questions you may have for us now or later. You have our email addresses, so we'd be happy to respond to you.
Sure. So someone was asking just about how long we've been doing the study and about the years of past data that we have available. Did you want to talk about just kind of the history of the report and where people can find more information about all the previous years?
Well,
Well,
sure. The information is there on the screen in front of you. So all these reports are available. They're on the website. You can download them. There's no charge for them. You can download them and share them with your institution, with other people. Again, as we said at the beginning, some of the questions have been consistent every year for the past 7 years that we've done this. Other ones have changed, and there's important findings from 3 or 4 years ago that we quit asking because we thought that was established, you know, kind of data, and we didn't have to keep asking it. So to really understand the full effect of all the kind of information, you need to read all 7 of them, and you'll see some things that show up over time and some other things that are kind of established. Like Carol said, they want short programs and they want to go through as fast as they can. That's a given that we don't ask about anymore, for example.
But the one we keep asking about, the location question, gets more interesting with every year.
So again, we'll say thank you for your interest in this particular webinar today. We enjoy your questions and comments. So if you want to email either of us, we're happy to respond to specific questions or react to you.
Absolutely.
And we wish you the best as you continue to serve this growing dynamic population.
Right. And I estimate right now, everybody's wondering what that proportion is. I'm heading toward about 20% of all college students today study fully online. It was 18 for the last several years, and in our local regional analyses, I can see it growing and growing. So if everybody wants to ask you, I think 1 out of 5 students in the United States at the undergraduate and graduate level study fully online.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
we want to
interesting.
thank you, Carol and
Okay.
David and Andrew, and everyone joining us today. We hope you found the information today to be valuable. You will receive an email with today's webinar presentation and the video and a survey link as well. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.